is Doom, which frankly needs no introduction. It's probably one of the most influential games ever made, single-handedly.
We forgot to say what podcast this is.
This is IndieCent. We're doing Doom.
Trans rights.
Welcome to Chapo Trap House.
Never say that again.
What is Chapo? Never mind, I don't want to know.
Never mind, don't. Anyway, we're doing Doom. Hello, good afternoon. We're back. We're back.
Dear.
You know the guys on the left who say the R slur?
Oh.
Or the N slur.
Lovely people. Welcome.
Welcome. IndieCent.
Anyways.
We talk about games, not just politics.
Danny will not be with us this episode. It's not because she was in Japan, because, well, she came back from Japan quite a while ago. We just took forever to get this recording done, and Danny has been busy with other stuff. I've also been busy with other stuff, which is part of the delay, as is Thomas. Elmo's been the only one who's not busy for some reason. I would imagine he would have been busy trying to make children cry somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess not.
No, yeah, you're pretty much spot on.
But anyways, I do want to say that if you've been subscribing to our channel, you probably noticed that I put up an episode of Heavy Storms that says commissioned episode on it. That's because we're taking commissions for that show now. You can check down in the links, and you can not only commission me for articles, but commission me to gather a panel and do an episode of Heavy Storms with a show of your choosing. Details on my blog, so go check that out. And let's just go ahead and get into this. Before we get to the Doom talk, we have our usual segments. So first, let's start with news stories. This time I picked two stories that I found, one very important and one just interesting. So let's start with the interesting one first, as we talk about the drama around the fan translation of Mizzurna Falls. Okay, I'm sure you two aren't aware of what I'm talking about. Let me get the link for you.
It's all I've been thinking about for the last 72 hours.
So there is this old Japanese-only PS1 open-world adventure game called Mizzurna Falls that was inspired by Twin Peaks. It came out like in the late 90s and never really got a US translation. There has been a fan translation around, but it's just the translated script. It's not actually in the game, because trying to code it into the game has been a nightmare for many, many years, and there's just not that many people interested because it's a very cult thing. User named Gemini got a sort of baseline start with it and put this code up on GitHub, hoping for someone along to come and use his work as a base to finish things up. Someone came along named Starplayer, who is not a coder, and did a minor tweak to it for stability issues. The build he put up crashes all the time, but he did give complete credit to Gemini and was like, hey, can we get someone like better than me at this to finish this version so we can have this game finally in English. Gemini was a little upset because this guy didn't like do what he wanted someone to do with it and just released technically a kind of broken version. Even though you could play it, it does crash all the time, and eventually things got childish as Gemini just started fucking going nuclear and destroying any download links to this fucking build. And the other guy started posting piracy links everywhere, and it was big, childish, dumb bullshit. Congratulations!
Video games!
Way to go.
At least there does seem to be a happy story for this, where Gemini mentioned that he did find a skilled hacker through all this drama who wants to work with him in making a proper finished build, so we'll see how that turns out later on.
By which time David Lynch recorded on Twin Peaks Season 4, which probably will be a video game at this rate.
So, the thing about fan translations is that if something hasn't been translated yet, it's either because it's really hard to translate and put the translation in the game, which is why I don't think we're ever going to get beyond, like, the English script translation just on some dude's blog of the Suda51's first solo-directed game with complete creative control, like Moonlight Syndrome, I think it was. Yeah, we're never actually going to see that text in the game. But in some cases, also because a game is just really obscure. So, like, we'll have situations like a 21-year-old Fire Emblem game just now getting an English fan translation just like last week or so when we were recording this. But we also get situations like this where people are just like, hey, can someone take an interest in this game so we can actually play it in English finally? And, well, the thing about fan circles is that people, when you get enough creative and driven people together, eventually they're going to start clawing at each other. Oh, God.
That or you inevitably get the third one, which is like the company that, in the case of things like games where there's been a significant change between Japanese and English. So, for example, Ted Woolsey's infamous scripts on the earlier Final Fantasy games, where you may get a translation that is actually more appropriate to the Japanese, but sort of you end up with the, you know, for example, what happened with Final Fantasy VI's Game Boy Advance and subsequently the subsequent re-releases of FF6 is they initially wanted to have it closer to the Japanese without the Woolseyisms, as they're known. For example, most notably the infamous Son of a Submariner line, only to find people really quite annoyed those lines had been taken out.
Video game.
What fan-translated games have you both played?
Mother 3.
Way!
None of them.
For me, it's just also Mother 3, and like the first thing I ever emulated was an English translated version of Clock Tower, The First Fear, on SNES. That was really good.
I did also try the fan translation for Shin Megami Tensei 2, but of course I didn't finish it because Shin Megami Tensei 2 is ridiculously hard. But yeah, I have been interested in this scene. There are some games I want to see get really proper fan translations, particularly Lux Pain on the DS. Yeah, it was a visual novel with a really cool look to it that got screwed over hard when it got released in America because it just got one of the worst translation jobs I've ever seen in my life. So like, I'm still oh yeah, and I'm still waiting for the finished fan translation of that. And I also played through English translation a Japanese only DS horror game released by Square Enix called The Nameless Game, or Nanashi no Game, and that is a very slow game, but it's spooky. It's good.
I mean,
there's some cool stuff out there.
I mean, this is an interesting question to posit off the back of it. I mean, games are increasingly, unless it's very obscure stuff. I mean, obviously this is good. This is as now. I mean, even fairly minor stuff is getting now translated into English and released, even if it's just dumped onto the relevant e-stores. So it is getting better. There's far less now, unless it's sort of very esoteric or very odd, sort of stuff. Would you say dark, or would you say probably it's more of a mainstream thing that games are getting, that the sort of you'll get mainstream games translated, but sort of everything else will be sort of left by the roadside?
Yeah, pretty much. And if you want to really something particularly small or obscure to get translated, there needs to be something noticeable about it that can build a fan base, which is the case with this game, because Mizzurna Falls was an open world game in 1998 on the PS1.
That's pre-Shenmue, eh? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's before Shenmue, that's before Grand Theft Auto, that's before all of them, and it was for a weird takeoff of Twin Peaks, so it also outpaced like Deadly Premonition like a decade later from Swery, who is a piece of shit who works with an abuser in the game industry and can go fuck himself. All Swery games are bad, this is my take.
That's it.
Fight me.
Oh, Ace Attorney Investigations 2. That got translated as well. I like that game.
But I think the industry is getting better at sort of that. I mean, obviously there are more games being released these days, but also I would say that there seems to be, particularly with Japanese games, a far larger number of, titles like that I don't think would have been translated back in the 1632, 64-bit era, now getting translated regularly.
I wouldn't say regularly. It takes a lot of projects, a lot of time to go anywhere, and sometimes translation projects get abandoned. This was the case for a Kogios DS game, I believe, called Lost Colors. It was a visual novel that let you play through the first season of the series as a new character who, like in Bleach the Third Phantom's appearance, just ends up kind of throwing everything off the rails. And I've been really interested in trying it for a long time, but the translation never got finished. It's a visual novel, which defeats the purpose.
Oh, definitely. I think obviously with visual novels, I mean, you are seeing now, particularly through things like Urineko and Higurashi, you are seeing, visual novels, even sort of stuff that is comparatively niche, like Otome and BL visual novels getting translated into English officially. But it's still...
I'm still kind of surprised that they somehow said they're translating officially Saya no Uta.
Yeah, it's like, bloody hell. But I think it is... I mean, obviously, we're talking about sort of the indie scene. I think you're always going to have a trouble unless you have got either somebody who's fluent, a creator who's fluent enough in English, or somebody who's auteurish enough to go, I have seen this game, I like this game, I can understand Japanese and English, I'm going to have a hack at sort of translating it into English from Japanese, or alternatively the game gets picked up by a larger studio and released. But I will say, I will agree sort of, that sort of a lot of this is labour of love sort of stuff. These aren't people who are getting paid for this. These are people who sort of going, I'm going to try, and I think that's something that's sort of still in a more accessible world, in terms of particularly sort of anime and gaming subculture from Japan. You are still seeing at the sort of the edges, the fan subbing, the sort of the scanlators that sort of still exist, in more niche and more sort of, I suppose one would call indie sort of scenes and series.
Yeah, but the thing with fan subs these days is it feels like that's more of an outwardly political thing, where a lot of people just reject the translations, official translations, more often because you can look up Crunchyroll's many mistakes they've made over the years.
I mean, we only have to
with Gotchaman Crowds, they one of the characters' major catchphrases was translated completely wrong and given a completely different, confusing meaning for like half of the initial run.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I understand stuff like that. And then, of course, you have idiots who are like, we have to make it more like the Japanese words, and
they think
what they really mean is we hate women's.
Or they end up putting kun on the end of everyone's name, even though that's you know, an honorific that doesn't translate well into English.
Honestly, I'm iffy on the whole honorific issue because I do understand that people don't want to use honorifics sometimes, but it's also something that doesn't really translate cleanly into English. And so eventually you hit a point, if a game has enough honorifics, that you have a challenge ahead of you because they keep coming up all the time.
Which is obviously...
So then at that point, if it like takes place in Japan, then you can at least have the argument it's more authentic. But at that point, you're like, why not just do what Yakuza does and not have a dub at all?
And just sub everything.
You aren't one of those Gamergate creeps, are you?
And plus, obviously, I mean, the big sort of, if we talk about sort of official translations, if we look at sort of companies like Nintendo, and if we take an example from the world of anime, the absolute car crash that is the Neon Genesis Evangelion redub, people can push points and sort of translate things, and particularly with a language as nuanced as Japanese.
It's not necessarily the actor's fault in that case.
No, absolutely not.
Just the translator, because the translator's a piece of shit. I do like they got an actual trans actress, I believe, for Shinji.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was cool.
No,
but then of course the script they're working with is garbage
and is just a mess. But the thing is, I think you always win in translation, whatever you do, even if you are. I mean, I read a lot of Japanese fiction in translation, and even then, you know, with somebody as well renowned.
He means doujins.
No, I mean Haruki Murakami. Even with, you know, a Nobel-nominated, you know, author, you are going to always lose something in translation.
Something I've noticed, just kind of hanging around the doujin translation scene, is that compared to what I expect from other translation scenes, it's the Wild West where everybody does whatever the fuck they want. And if someone doesn't like a translation, they just make their own translation. And it's partly because a lot of the works are short, so it's much easier to do that. And sometimes this leads to collaborative efforts by complete accident, where someone will use an initial translation as a base for a later translation to help them out with parts they're having trouble understanding, translating it themselves.
And that, I think, is a scene where unless you have some extremely...
And that only happens with the really, really fetishy stuff.
Absolutely.
Because nobody else is translating that.
I mean, that is a complete Wild West. And obviously is a scene that obviously you don't get sort of replicated, but perhaps with the exception of fan fiction in sort of Western culture, you know, that it is basically... sort of, you are never going to get the vast majority of doujins translated into English unless you either pirate them and sort of print them yourself, in which case you're a terrible person, or B, that sort of some company, you know, releases an official anthology, in which case you're only going to get the G-rated stuff anyway.
Yeah, that just doesn't happen much, especially for the stuff I find interesting, which I'm not going to go into here for obvious reasons.
But that said, I do actually have an anthology of really not safe for work Yuri on Ice doujins, and it is clearly a compilation of doujins. And I bought it in a Japanese bookshop in London. Over the counter.
Of course, that's a very big hit mainstream anime, so like...
Exactly.
But then, but like original works is where things get weird, especially the really fetish stuff, because just some stuff ain't gonna... ever get anywhere.
Not
I am still amazed that Milda 7, an artist whose entire thing was making forced cross-dressing comics, and a lot of the times not even in a particularly pornographic way, but doing it in a weird charcoal style, that aspect of their art alone actually got them a sizable audience.
I have the first 50 volumes of Why the Hell Are You Here, Sensei?
What?
I just wanted to be part of the conversation, I don't know.
Okay.
It's okay, Elmo, we're alright. We'll stop talking about manga.
Danny's missing out. Danny's missing out on the porn talk. let's move on to the next story. Let me go ahead and leave a link for everyone.
My fanon is that noise was Danny texting you somehow.
Oh.
Are you talking about porn?
You're gonna look at the diaper masochist comics, Danny.
That's GDP. That's a major GDPR breach.
So our next story and the final one is a big one that I knew we had to cover, and surprisingly, it is not the discovery that 2K, no, not 2K, Take-Two sent actual goons to someone's house over a Borderlands leak, and by Borderlands leak I mean they accidentally released a trailer with all the information that a lot of people saw, but for some reason their first course of action upon thinking it was a leak was to send actual goons to someone's house. God. But no, this is worse. This is deals with the ESA basically doxing 2,000 journalists. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. This is
so the ESA is a terrible organization run by horrible people who support Republicans and go fuck themselves. And that's honestly, I could just stop there, but let me keep going. They are basically trade reps for the gaming industry on the large scale. It turns out they don't give a shit about security because for every journalist that has been to E3 for the past few years, they've just been storing all of their information, including their names, addresses, phone numbers, and so forth, on an Excel spreadsheet that could be easily accessed once someone knew about it.
yeah, that's
So
a big fine. That's a big fine coming if any of them are European.
and it gets worse because this story was broke by a YouTube video by one Sophia Narwitz, who it turns out is a Gamergator. And they broke this story as a way to basically tell all their Gamergator friends that, hey, here's this thing you can go to dox all these journalists you don't like because women's and the gays and whatever. Of course, she didn't frame it like that, but she also didn't fucking email anyone affected by this entire thing, and no one knew about the dox really until she made that video. So fuck her. The best case scenario is that she did terrible journalism, and the worst case is that she's actively violent and malicious. And in both cases, fuck her.
You are one of those Gamergate creeps.
I think you approach criminally liable at that point.
Yeah.
It's like
I honestly hope this means E3 is finally done forever, because who the fuck would actually go there in person after this? Jesus Christ, this is a disaster.
I agree.
I agree entirely.
Like, you could access this fucking document through a link. Why did they even have that data? The ESA is despicable. Like, why do game journalists have it bad? I mean, they basically even when they're doing like soft PR pieces and just reading off press releases, people still despise them and want them dead, and now this happens, and just what the fuck? I am honestly flabbergasted by this. Like, I did want to lead with the Take-Two thing because they hired goons, but
we're only temporarily disabling the tower. You need to remove each lens individually. Carefully release the hinges.
Had a service drop. Sorry about that.
Hey!
Hello. We thought that the Borderlands people had sent goons to your house.
Okay, so where are we?
Man, that woman sucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is the ESA.
Which is ironic, because man, that woman sucks is basically the slogan of Gamergate.
There are women in Gamergate? This is like turkeys voting for Christmas levels.
They're called there's like an entire sect of them called the Honey Badgers, and they are. It's a similar situation to the Blacks for Trump thing, where it turns out the guy who was in charge of Blacks for Trump used to be a cult member.
What sort of cult? The sexy cult or the nutty cult, sort of in the desert, sort of preparing for the end time?
Outlast 2, but less entertaining.
It's just an endless loop of awful people finding new places of power and influencing people who just don't know better. And oh my god, it's tiring. I'm honestly not sure what else to add, but like that's just a big story you can't pass up. Like, this is earth-shattering level of holy shit for this industry, and like it's gonna make a lot of people reevaluate how they interact with the gaming industry. It's gonna make a lot of journalists reevaluate if E3 is even worth covering anymore, considering what the cost appears to be now.
And probably learn to how hefty fun on the ESA's front of letterbox.
Oh, the ESA is never gonna actually face any repercussions for this. Because that's the way the world works. And also, they keep giving money to Trump, so you know.
It seems like a GDPR breach to me.
I'm gonna move on.
In Britain, ESA is employment and support allowance.
Not here.
The more you know. That's not how the jingle goes. There isn't even a jingle.
Swiftly off.
Ah!
The ghost of Joe Lieberman rising from the grave, laughing. Even though he's not dead yet, but he might as well be.
In spirit, he's dead.
Let's go ahead and move on to what we've been playing.
Touch the sky, but I'm falling so deep now I realize maybe I was never meant to fly. Instead my wings keep bringing me down. I'm having flashbacks, hoping that I'll never ever hit the ground. If I had the chance I would spread my wings up and fly, but I'm falling down now I realize I don't really want to die. I'm not really ready now, it's not the time, I need a second chance. I see myself falling. The ground is so fast. I'm drifting high, you lift me up, then give it up, just stop me. I'm rising high while I'm falling down.
Okay, so I don't have a timer anymore because the battery died. And I don't know how to use the other timer we have because it's stupid and doesn't even have, like, the ability to type in seconds.
Do you want me to time? I'm quite happy to time. Hang on.
No, I'm just going to watch the clock on my end. And besides, since there's only 3 of us, we are each going to have 10 minutes this time. Don't worry about it. That's about the same amount of time as usual. 7 times 4 is 28 minutes. So it's just like extra 2 minutes, and a lot of us aren't even going to use them.
No.
The extra minutes are mandatory. You have to speak for them.
I'm going to go ahead and start because I have a lot of games I want to cover real fast and some I want to take more time on, so I'll start us off. I've been playing mini games. I actually did a commissioned article for one called Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. It is a Dungeons & Dragons freemium sort of game, and it's actually pretty good for that. You can find it on Steam, and I'm sure it's got to be on mobile somewhere. I have problems with the pricing if you want to get anything in the store, but at least they don't seem to have any sort of like currency scams going on, so that's nice. Just go check out my article. It should be out by the time this comes out if you want more on that. I started the first Rage, the last game id Software ever made before they were devoured by Bethesda, the most incompetent game studio of all time. God, Rage 2 looks like such a piece of shit. But the original Rage, it feels very confused. It's like if you mashed together... My initial take on it was that it was like, what if Borderlands, but without the comedy? It was just like, but that's just the first Borderlands. But then it's also like, yeah, but what if the gunplay wasn't RPG focused, but shooter focused? And that's okay. But the problem is the game doesn't really have a sense of personality or like style to it. Even though there are clearly elements, there are some breathtaking sequences like the way environments are set up. They look almost like concept art brought to life. It's amazing. But then you're just like, then after that you're just like, oh, everything's brown and gray. And then you occasionally see something weird like a mirror wearing steampunk clothing, and that's cool. And then it's just like, oh, more brown and gray. And it's like, okay. The shotgun is good though, which is, you know, an id Software game. Of course the shotgun's good. I played both X-Blades and Blades of Time. And if you were around in the 7th generation of consoles, you probably remember X-Blades solely because the main anime girl had the thong. I'm not kidding. That is actually a major part of that game's lineage. There is a detailed section on Wikipedia for this game about that thong and the controversy surrounding it. And
that was Oni-chan Bara.
No, X-Blades is different. X-Blades is not a Japanese game. It is a Russian-made game from 2007 that got re-released in 2009 for like the Xbox 360 and PS3 around the world because, like, I think someone at Topware saw the game somewhere. I think that was the people who published it and were like, wow, that thong can sell games to a lot of confused teenagers who are just now discovering Naruto hentai. It's a weird game because, like, it's not good. It's a B game, which is obvious, but, like, there are just a lot of basic things that don't seem thought out at all, like how most combat comes down to using, pressing the magic AoE attack to end the fight, but it also looks kind of cool. Like, it has a sense of style to it I wasn't expecting. But also, like, I would never recommend it to anyone ever unless you have a particular taste for, like, subpar B games from the era where nobody knew what the fuck they were doing.
Very quality.
Blades of Time is a spiritual successor to X-Blades released in 2012, and that I would actually recommend with a bit of an asterisk. It's basically an entire different game, entirely different art style, tons more mechanics. It has a competency I wasn't expecting, but at the same time, that makes the little moments where the things don't quite work correctly very obnoxious. There are very frustrating moments where the game's actually telling you to do something else and you don't realize it, but in other times it's perfectly fine and enjoyable. It's an interesting little B-game action-adventure sort of thing. Let's see, I started Dragon's Dogma, and of course my character is basically just Rukia Kuchiki. And I made her a rogue, so she's very tiny and stabs things very quickly, and that makes me happy.
I thought that was the visual novel with the evil robot bear who makes those students kill each other.
And anyways, I'll talk more about Dragon's Dogma once I've played more of it. Detention is wrapped up. That is a very good horror point and click, and if you haven't played it yet, what the fuck are you doing? We've been singing the praises of that game for ages now. I started Desert Child, indie game I mentioned during our year-end wrap-up, where I was kind of excited for it. I am not playing it much right now because they're working out an issue where the Steam overlay won't work with the game properly to take screenshots, which is kind of important because I need screenshots for articles I want to make about the game. But it's very interesting. It's one of the most stylish games I've ever seen. Has this very cool, like, hip-hop slash Japanese feel to it. Like, you can tell the person who made this was really into Samurai Champloo. I would highly recommend it just for the style alone. It's a bit costly for amounts of game you're going to get from it, but it's also a sort of game that I can see you replaying a lot. It's basically a racing sim sort of mix. You'll understand it more if you give it a shot. I picked up and played like 30 hours of West of Loathing, and that is a very, very good game in ways I was not expecting. If you don't know about the Loathing series, there's a game called Kingdom of Loathing. It is an MMO that has been running for like 2 decades now, where everyone is a terrible looking stick figure, and there's a boss who's just called Guy Made of Bees, because he's a guy made of bees, and the bees are angry at you. And then one of the classes is called Steel Clubber, and another like Accordion Thief, or something like that. So, you know, it's a very good game, and West of Loathing is a single-player version of that with a Wild West theme, and it might be one of the most involved RPGs I played in a while that wasn't a big-budget production. It has a surprisingly strong presentation. Like, there's cool graphical effects, even though everything is a stick figure. And there's a lot of ways to customize your character. The combat system is really fun. There is a ridiculous amount of stuff to do in the game and stuff to find that the game doesn't telegraph for you, which I really respect. Like, every time you play that game, you'll come out a bit different. I would highly recommend it. It is well worth it, and it has a DLC campaign and more on the way, so you're going to get your bang for your buck. And lastly, I want to mention that I started Phantom Dust, and I'm very mad none of you told me how awesome this game actually was, and that there was an NPC in the game named Chunky, and when you talk to him, he says, "Hey rookie, my name is Chunky, nice to meet ya." That's amazing. But honestly, Phantom Dust is one of the coolest looking games I've ever seen. Like, at one point when I was fighting, it was sorry, for you youngins, Phantom Dust was an Xbox exclusive action RPG made by the guy who made Panzer Dragoon Saga, which I also know none of you have heard of. Shut up. It's basically about a world where nobody has memory and they're trying to find it, and there are ruins everywhere, and you get magic powers and fight robots in ruins. And what shocked me was at one point when I was fighting in like an abandoned mall ruins, that I missed a fireball shot and it hit the environment, and then suddenly a bridge collapsed, and was like, okay, this game's awesome. So yeah, Phantom Dust, good. Where the fuck is that sequel you promised us, Microsoft? And that's what I've been playing. Let's go next.
Oh, I'll go next.
Go for it.
I've actually been playing a lot this month. Let's see, let's start with the biggest game I've been playing this month. I've been playing Persona 5.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, sweet God, that's such a good game. I know there's problems with it, and I know like the Atlas just cannot write LGBT characters for shit, but fucking hell, that's such a good game.
The main director of the Persona series is an active transphobe.
Fuck him.
He made Catherine even more transphobic somehow.
Fuck him. Anyway, for those who've been under a rock, Persona 5 is the game of which you and a bunch of strangely dressed people go and do crime whilst being basically demon people. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it so far. Yes, I'm absolutely aware it has problems, but it's just like, ugh. I think this is the most I've been excited about playing a video game in quite a period, and it's probably the first real time I played like a SMT game as well. So, yeah. So far, I think, but then again, it is one of these games that says a lot about the society that it is from, and that
we live in one.
Yes, we live in a society. Society.
Let's not get too political here, guys.
Society is awful and corrupt, and strangely, for some reason, the villain from Alvin and the Chipmunks seems to be running everything.
and then the game ends as like, and it just kind of wraps back around into the Japanese idea of unity. So it just becomes like, it looks like it's going to be progressive, but it turns out it's conservative the entire time. Haha, gotcha, kids.
To be fair, it was written in the aftermath of like a major disaster in Japan, which Japanese society is still recovering from. But
what is kind of significant, though, is this is a common running theme with all the modern Persona games. 4 did this shit too. Which is how you got Golden basically erasing any chance we had of 2 of the major characters having being queer. With a new epilogue that just erased that shit completely.
Which is interesting because Persona 5 the Golden seems to be heading merrily in the opposite direction. Like, remarkably in the opposite direction to what they did with 4 and the Golden.
I do know how Persona 5 ends. I won't spoil it for you, but like, it basically ends a lot how like Persona 4 ended, and in that like the answer to the problem is not actually radical reform or challenging the system, but like actually I'm not sure they offer a solution for any of the problems they raise.
No, but then again, that's
the fucked up part.
Yeah. But visually and stylistically, and my god, it is probably the best soundtrack of any AAA game.
Oh yeah,
the last
Meguro
decade.
Makes really good tracks.
It's such a good, and I have been actually listening to like other sort of non-video game acid jazz, and it's like, oh my god. I have discovered an entire subgenre because of a game. I have also been playing Super Mario Odyssey, which is still really fun. I'm pretty much finished with it, actually, which is surprising because, again, this is like the first Mario game I've ever really sat down and played, because my brother was more the person who played the Mario games. But it is really fun. I think Mario Odyssey is perhaps the best 3D Mario we've ever had so far. I'm putting that straight out there. It is beautifully made.
You dissing Sunshine?
I no, don't get me wrong. Sunshine is good, but Odyssey is just there is almost a childlike glee to Odyssey.
You dissing New Super Mario Bros. 2?
That doesn't count, Elmo. That's 2D.
That's 2D, Elmo.
It's a bastion of quality. The third dimension is your appreciation.
What else have I been playing? This month I've also been playing 2 mobile phone games. One of them is basically the Harry Potter Pokemon Go game, which is called...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a month for playing games created by terrible individuals.
And not just that it was made by terrible people, but it's a terrible ripoff.
It is a terrible...
of an already pretty not good game.
Yeah, to be fair, it bolts on like an actual leveling system and sort of a really rudimentary RPG, sort of, you know, min-max.
At least it's not the other Harry Potter game that won't let you, that will threaten to strangle the child if you don't give it money.
Yeah, so it's alright. It's the sort of thing that I play on the... Basically, I play it on the way to work and I play it on the way home. And that's about... At least the thing is, it's not done as well. Probably not because it's not bolted to the largest behemoth in sort of cultural history, Pokemon. It's not done as well as people hoped. So it's sort of increasingly feeling like a really... Because they have, as Elmo will probably agree, they have gone fairly hard in advertising this.
Yes.
It is like everywhere. You can't escape the fact this game has been released, and one of the major mobile phone networks in the UK, EE, probably known better, if you're European, you probably know better as Orange, have gone all in on, you know, supporting this game, to the fact that they have got branded themed stops in the game. I have also been playing Ruby Amity Arena, which is basically a arena combat game with characters from the web series Ruby, and it's actually quite fun and addictive, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Which brings me on to the last game I've been playing this year, because my girl is coming to BlazBlue Tag Battle. And I could not be happier because I am going to kick everybody's ass as two umbrella-wielding, remarkably violent girls. I have been playing a lot of BlazBlue. And that's what I've been playing this month. And I think I killed Elmo.
I'm dead.
Okay, are we all wrapped up?
Yeah, I'm done. That's what I've been playing.
Alright, Elmo's... Okay, it's Elmo's turn.
Hey,
Talk about Outlast, user.
yeah. I don't have notes for the first time.
Elmo,
so
did you
bad at
write
improvising.
something about Outlast?
Yeah. It's funny
Plug it.
because Dragon's Dogma sounds a little bit like Danganronpa. So
The story is filled with despair.
Yeah.
No, in
Okay.
all seriousness, the story's pretty fucked once you know what's going on.
No. Okay, so yeah, what have I been playing? I wrote a thing on Outlast because I wanted to see if I could write a serious thing, so I thought, I really want to talk about Outlast because I love it. What a fantastic game. Also, like, fucking ableist piece of shit. Like, running around this mental asylum where everyone's running around screaming bloogie woogie woo and trying to whack you on the head with a stick. It's not good at all. So I thought it'd be fun to take well, okay, maybe not fun. Thought it'd be interesting to take a more serious look at that. You should go to dopefishblog.com to check it out. And then you can go to dopefishblog.com to check out my finished review of I Am Setsuna, because I finished I Am Setsuna, and that will be up by the time this goes out. And
Do not sue Elmo, Todd Howard, please.
it's a weird, kind of contradictory game, because it like really desperately wants to invoke the spirit of Chrono Trigger. Like it goes really hard on Chrono Trigger, and
Or
it
Chrono Cross. Which one?
No, probably more Trigger, but it goes far enough that you're like, okay, fine, I accept it. I Am Setsuna. You've got me thinking about Chrono Trigger, but I Am Setsuna's not as good as Chrono Trigger. So it goes to all this effort of reminding you of another game that it's not really as good as, which is an interesting play. But that said, it's still like a really good mini I say mini, it's like 30 hours, but for an RPG that is pretty short. It's still a good game.
That's actually around the length of the SNES era RPGs.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Final Fantasy games were like solid 40 hours.
I Am Setsuna's probably even shorter than them, but it's I like RPGs. I liked I Am Setsuna. It's not fantastic, but it's pretty good, and I like pretty good games. They're alright.
Or you could buy West of Loathing
Yes.
and be a
what else
snake
have I-
oiler and get your grandmother's bag of snakes. I'm sorry, a briefcase full of snakes.
Oh yeah, finished Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton. I think it's actually the other way around, but I just call it that way because I like Phoenix Wright more. It was really good, but also, you know, it's Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton. It didn't like exceed my expectations at all, because my expectations were, well, this is going to be a 10 out of 10 game. So I've
Not
got
Devil May Cry 5 level, got it.
Yeah. What else did I... Oh! Yeah, the big one. I have been playing Night in the Woods. I don't want to say too much about it because
Crimes.
I can't figure out whether Night in the Woods is going to be my next IndieCent pick or if I'm just going to wait until the end of the year and talk about it when it's really high on my best list.
I'd honestly pick something a bit more out there. Because, like, I mean, Night in the Woods, I need to get around to playing it, and it's really good, but also, like, I feel like everyone who talks about indie games has talked about that game to death already.
Yeah, I feel bad because I'm already picking it, I'm sorry. Sorry to let you down. I didn't want to break the illusion of, like, ooh, maybe I'll pick something different. But no, it's Night in the Woods. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not that disappointed. I'm just like, I'd rather give it to something that's like more unknown because like Night in the Woods was a massive hit.
I've been. I want to try and do that because there are so many games like Ronin or I want to say Anodyne, but Anodyne was fairly successful too.
Actually, Anodyne, the sequel's out. I've been playing a little bit of that for review. I'm not going to say much, but shit's wild.
But yeah, I do kind of want to play those games, but it's difficult because Ronin is a really interesting game to talk about, but it's also like it's okay. It's a strong 6 to 7 out of 10. And Night in the Woods is like a 500,000 out of 10, so it's difficult.
I'd say go about it like I did with Broken Reality and just look for something and point at it and go, that's my aesthetic. And
That's
run
fair.
with it.
Yeah. The only other thing I think I've been playing... Oh, I went back to Roller Coaster Tycoon again. Let's talk about that more. Mainly just because there's a park named Arid Heights where... instead of it being like, oh, by the end of year 3 or year 4, get this many guests and get this much of a park rating. Instead, it just says, this level ends when you get like 2,000 guests. You have infinite money. The only catch is you cannot let your park rating fall below 700. So if any of your rides crash, you're kind of screwed. And if your park is full of vomit and rubbish, then you'd probably lose. And
That's pretty easy to avoid.
Yeah, and I got really excited about it because I just thought, wait, the fact that this isn't on a timer means that hypothetically you could speedrun this. I want to see Roller Coaster Tycoon at Games Done Quick, and Arid Heights is the way it could do it. Oh, and I started Aquaria for Hardcore Gaming 101 because they got somebody else to start Aquaria, and then the other person was like, I mean, it's okay, but it's nothing. Get someone else to do it. So it went to me. I wonder who that other person was.
George Bush.
Yes. It was Society. No, but honestly, Aquarius, I've only played like 20 minutes of it so far, but it's pretty fun. Oh, and I went back to Guitar Hero 2 because my friend is trying to get me to start Assassin's Creed 3. So instead, I was just like, I'm going to play Guitar Hero 2 again. Only this time I'm playing it the right way round. Like, I imagine someone holding a Guitar Hero controller with all the buttons. I used to just move my thumb and hit all of the buttons with my thumb, which is not how you're supposed to play the game, but it's how I did it because it worked for me, and now I'm finally learning to do it the proper way with all my fingers. So, that's pretty much it. Oh, and I also played Doom for like 10 minutes. And then I remembered like 3 years ago I beat Doom all the way through, so I kind of thought, that's kind of enough.
Let's talk about Doom.
Let's talk about Doom, baby. Let's just cancel that. Edit that out, Doc.
No.
Okay.
So, I don't know how we're going to tackle this because, I mean, like, this is the video game, basically. Like, video games probably wouldn't exist as they are without Doom existing. Oh boy. I can at least say this is one of the few good things Texas has done as given to the cultural zeitgeist. Weird thing, we also made Texas Instruments and they've actually done good stuff. That's weird. For those who don't know, Doom was a For those of you who don't know, what the hell is wrong with you? We're not talking about the 2016 Doom millennials, or whatever the fuck you call children these days.
Any other game called Doom.
Potential crying victims.
Okay, yeah, that. Yeah, Doom is a 1993 release by id Software, and it's basically the most important video game ever made, and there's not a single person alive who thinks it's a bad game, and if they do, that's because they're wrong.
It also runs on everything in existence.
You could literally play it on a toaster somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm playing it on my microphone right now.
I should probably talk a little bit about the background of why I picked Doom, because Doom is a game I've only played now. Yeah, that's a good for a moment. Doom, I've only played Doom in the last, obviously since the last episode. And yeah, you could, I mean, even 23 years onwards, even sort of 6, 7, perhaps 8 level degrees of console later, even though this is basically, I mean, the version I played was the enhanced port of Doom, which I forget the title of at the moment, which I think is just called
Ultimate Doom?
Ultimate Doom. And even Ultimate Doom is only 94 and is like running on, I think it was like the PC engine or something. It's like basically, you know,
I think it's id Tech 1.
id Tech 1. Anyway, it's you know, it visually it feels somewhat antiquated. And then E1M1, which is the first track on the first level, kicks in and the years just peel away. It is astonishing.
There's so much to talk about this game, because, like, a lot of the people involved with it you might have heard of, particularly John Romero, who also believes in trans rights. That's important to know.
Doomguy.
Who went on to make his own company, Ion Storm, which did not go well because he is bad at running businesses. And he admits it as much, and he does apologize for that one ad I know you're all thinking of right now. And if you don't know what that ad is, oh god, I'm old.
John Romero is about to make Graham Linehan his bitch.
No.
Yes.
But no, the Doom was introduced to me by a friend at university, and this friend is basically an extremely cool girl and generally awesome. Doom means so much to her, she has the cheat code from Doom tattooed onto her wrist.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
This is the sort of game which has that effect on people. It is you know what it is. Probably I would put this on a level with the original Tetris, original Super Mario, original Legend of Zelda, perhaps Pokemon, perhaps Minecraft, and this is it. That you could give those 5 games to people, and that's it. That is all the video games you ever need to play.
It's so interesting this game ended up being so influential because it's basically a giant collage of stuff the developers thought was cool. I mean, they outright stole the Beholder enemy from Dungeons & Dragons and put it in the game. A lot of the music is directly sampled from existing metal albums, including Panthera. I understand that Romero, when he was making levels for this game, he went to focus on aesthetics, for example, so I imagine he put in a ton of references to stuff. The chainsaw is there because the team really liked Evil Dead. I could go on.
Yeah, it's a melange of popular culture in the beginning of the 90s, basically.
I liked how it was explained on Erant Symbol that the ID's shooters have a certain quality to them because they're basically a collage of the stuff that all the developers really into, like how Unreal, no, not Unreal, I'm getting that mixed up. Quake was like a sort of mix of like angst, the like Trent Reznor sort of sound from that era, Lovecraft stuff and all that. And with Doom, it's much more simple. It's a lot of anger, violence, Dungeons and Dragons, the Evil Dead movies, metal albums, and shit like that. And it just kind of taps into this, like, an aesthetic that has never been quite so compiled quite as perfectly before, not even in the 2016 Doom, which people really like, and not even id was able to really do again, like when they made Rage, because that's supposed to be sort of a mixture of like English punk aesthetics, a bit of Road Warrior, some steampunk in there, Asian mysticism, but no, it doesn't really come together like it did in their old games, for example. So like Doom, I think it sticks out so much these days because we're like living in an age of aesthetics where look and sound is almost as important as substance, because it kind of conveys stuff to a lot of us that can't really be conveyed in words. And for Doom, what it's conveying is, this shit's awesome.
Pretty much.
I was looking into the development of this a bit, and I find it interesting that Tom Hall, who actually went on with Romeo to found Ion Storm because he was mad at John Carmack for his now infamous quote of, story in a video game is like story in pornography. It's nice when it's there, but it's like people. It's not something people look for. I forget how the quote exactly went, and I'm pretty sure John Carmack knows a lot about pornography, stealing that joke from McMuscles. But yes, Tom Hall wanted to originally make this game as a much more serious science fiction story, but then Carmack was like, "No, it should be an open world," and everyone agreed. He's like, "Oh," and then they realized, "Oh shit, we can't do an open world." And it was too late to do the story stuff. And it's like, oh. And then he started designing his levels like people would design the Wolfenstein levels. And then Romero was like, that's not cool at all. It should be cool. And he's like, oh. And then he's like, okay, I'll make it cool. And then it was like, good job. He's like, oh. And then he got mad at John Carmack again and left the company. And then later levels and later episodes, because this game was released episodically, were handled by John Romeo and Sandy Peterson. And Romeo did a lot of the more aesthetic, cool-looking stuff. Well, I should also point out one name I think some of you might have known, because this man refuses to let people forget his name. American McGee was a level designer on this game, and he went on to make the Alice series. And no, we're not going to get a third one. Go away, American McGee. It's okay. You don't have to. We're good. We got enough Hot Topic shit.
He says producing 500 more bits of Hot Topic related limited things.
Yeah, like anyone goes to Hot Topic anymore. But yeah, that. Oh, and of course Robert Prince, I'm pretty sure, just really liked Panthera and like Megadeth and all that stuff, which is fine. Yeah, what's interesting is I discovered is that Robert Prince, when he was composing for this game, he just composed stuff that sounded good, but he wanted to originally do a more ambient sound before Romeo was like, no, there should be like guitar riffs, because John Romeo is John Romeo. And Romeo actually ended up doing a mixture of those tracks when he was putting them into the game, which is kind of interesting, which is why you get really big highs like the E1M1 sound at the start of the game, but you also get a lot of ambient tracks for some levels, which works because this game actually has really good atmosphere a lot of the times. That was what really surprised me, just how atmospheric this game still felt like 2.5 decades after it was made.
I mean, definitely.
Where do I even start with that?
I mean, definitely the game which probably I think will be the closest, the spiritual successor for this, Quake, which obviously, you know, has a soundtrack by Trent Reznor, and builds on sort of basically Quake is Doom but with better graphics, and sort of it moves more towards that darker atmosphere that sort of I think obviously was planned in the original Doom, but sort of left by the roadside by basically extremely kick-assness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because this game,
it's like, why feel sad about dead people when Chainsaw Face to demons?
But it's just like, oh my god, this game is just pure testosterone. I'm trying to think of any.
I do want to say right now that everyone really did bring their A game for this, especially John Carmack. The reason Daikatana sucks so bad was because, well, not sucks so bad, it was just like such a disappointment, was because John Romeo, he is a good designer, but he's not a great tech guy. And a lot of what he was able to do at id was because of the engines that John Carmack would make. So, like, a lot of the stuff you see here that's actually really impressive even today, like the lighting effects, the use of darkness, the incredible sound design. I was amazed by just how well that was handled, even with, like, bit-crushed animal sounds. It gave you a really good sense of where every enemy was, even when you couldn't see them. Like, that was all made possible because John Carmack knows how to code and knows how to build an engine, and then everyone had really fun toys to play with.
I mean, this is a game so, vital to it, that there is a book called, let me just check, it is called Masters of Doom, which is literally about the making of Doom, and obviously where Romero and McCormack went after Doom. This is sort of that important of a book, and it simply describes Masters of Doom as the amazing true story in the Lennon and McCartney of video games, and I think, frankly, that's not far off the mark.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm guessing Carmack is Lennon because he's the arse. Everyone seems to hate John Carmack, and everything I learn about him just makes me go, yeah. I was really surprised at just how well this held up. Like, there are some quirks, obviously, because this game was not designed with mouse controls, which is alien to me as playing first-person shooters today. Like, oh god, how do you play a first-person shooter without mouse controls? And when you play Doom, it makes sense because you don't have to actually aim properly at enemies. You just got to get in the general direction, and the shot will line up on its own. But then it's interesting because I actually played another game made in the Doom engine just last year, I believe. It was Strife. I mentioned it. The sort of shooter RPG made in the Doom engine in 1996. And when that got re-released on Steam, it actually got really good mouse controls with it. So it's kind of strange that Doom, which is now owned by Bethesda, has not released a version with good mouse controls.
Yeah, which is interesting about the very recent, obviously, to time with the release of Doom Eternal, which I think is later this year.
That should be.
Yes, the version they released, I believe, on the Nintendo Switch requires a network connection to work. Because Bethesda want to die.
No, that one was actually an accident. The idea was that the connection stuff was for members of their special whatever service, I don't care, but somehow they messed it up, and it decided that everyone needs to be online all the time.
Okay,
and they had to fix it.
So for once, it wasn't Bethesda making a mistake. That amazes.
Oh no, it was just not the mistake we thought it was.
Oh, okay.
Like an actual mistake and not being stupid. Oh yeah, I mentioned this was episodically released. It started with Knee Deep in the Dead and moved on the Shores to Hell, and then you get to Inferno, and I think that's where Romeo got a lot of freedom to do stuff. Because some of the coolest levels are definitely in that. Yeah. And the Ultimate Doom version we played also has a fourth set of levels called Thy Flesh Consumed. That's just basically Doom 2 1.5. Another, because it's just sort of like a prologue to it where you're fighting demons on Earth. Doom actually does have a story, and it turns out the Doomguy does not like war crimes, and that's why he was on Mars.
He's also a Christian. I believe is it the grandson or great-grandson of the protagonist of Wolfenstein?
I think he's the son of Commander Keen.
I think it's like Commander Keen is the grandson of the guy.
Oh, okay, so it's the great-grandson of the... And he also has... Is it a dog or a cat he has? Is sort of some...
I think it's a bunny.
A bunny, no, it's a bunny.
Yeah, the bunny dies at the end of Doom.
And it's
I think it's like you find out that the bunny's dead at the end of Doom, and then Doomguy's like, right now it's personal.
And now in the current continuity, Blazkowicz has two daughters who are giant dorks, and the new Keens are terrible, and no one likes them.
Mm-hmm.
But the Nazis are also still around, and I'm
just like in real life.
Commander Keen, are you ever going to address your ties to the Nazis?
In a weird way, that's kind of... I feel like a massive wet blanket for Doom, because it's such a fantastic game. But my connection with id Software was always Commander Keen. So whenever people were like, hey, you heard about this game by John Romero and John Carmack and id Software. Oh, it's fantastic. And I was thinking, hell yeah, they're talking about Commander Keen 4, the best one.
The funny thing about this is that they actually cut ties with Apogee, who they were like publishing games like Commander Keen when they made Doom, says they wanted to release this by themselves, and it's like they like released it on the internet through like a fucking university server and just expected people to pass the game around to shareware, which is what a lot of PC developers were doing, and that actually worked. They only bought like one ad in one magazine and like handed it out to like brick and mortar game stores, and like it's like, okay, you can price this however you want, get people to check it out, and like they can contact us if they want to buy more. And it was obviously one of the most successful games ever, so it turned out pretty well for him. Not Tom Hall though, because remember, he left the company. I think he went to either like 3D Realms or something. I didn't double check that, so don't quote me on any of that. But like Tom Hall left like in like after episode 1 release for sure, because John Carmack sucks.
But no, I think basically Doom is one of these games you almost forget how much of an impact it made upon gaming culture, because I mean there is a very good reason why Doomguy is like one of the probable possible DLC fighters for Smash, because yeah, he is he is a damn big part of video gaming history.
Honestly, I could see it happening, but not until Minecraft Steve gets in.
Yeah, I mean those two characters I'd be quite happy with. It's just like, yeah, you've got, you know, Minecraft, which is probably alongside Pokemon probably the most popular game in the world.
Then you also have to put in Stardew Valley guy at some point. Because that game sold like fucking hotcakes.
And obviously the creator of Minecraft, Miku Hatsune.
She was in video games, she can be in Smash.
Yeah, she was in that Persona dancing game for no apparent reason.
Oh no, the reason was to sell things to weebs, because Persona isn't actually is just for weebs now.
Yeah. Also Sega, probably.
You know, I wouldn't mind Persona so much if you just cut it out with the homophobia, because I am a weeb, and I will buy my sad, pathetic dating sim bullshit. But you just gotta not be homophobic about it anymore. You gotta stop that.
I mean,
stop pretending to be hip with the kids. You're not.
I mean, when even Nintendo are going, hang on a minute, there's like, yeah, we're actually putting proper, you know, same-sex characters into Fire Emblem.
And then
3.
they didn't.
And then they started, oh yeah, and then we realised it's Nintendo, and they're terrified of the American Bible Belt not buying their games, despite the fact I'm pretty sure there aren't any computers down there.
Apparently the new Fire Emblem is a mixed bag, where there is good stuff, but also the bad stuff is so bad, you're like, how the fuck did that even happen?
Dark, I played Fire Emblem Fates, I've seen the bottom of the barrel.
Well, it's better than that, but then it's just like, wait, how did that actually happen? Because remember, 2 of the 3 like S-paths with guys end with no homo, and you randomly marrying another woman in one of them. I'm pretty sure it's like, what?
Well, that's all shit that needs to be patched out.
At least they did patch out the terrible, terrible human being they got to voice the main male character.
Yeah, hopefully they'll do that with Octopath too.
Anyways, there's a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, we keep getting sidetracked, and we shouldn't, because it's just Doom, and it's great. And I was surprised by how much fun I was having just playing this on my own. And it's very interesting to go back to this era, because, like, I did not play PC games for a very long time, so I was not around for the era where things were not streamlined and easy to follow. So exploration in a first-person shooting game is still very alien to me, but I liked it a lot after the first few set of levels, because like the early Hall stuff was still kind of dry, and I think the secrets were way too obtuse. And sometimes when I did find all the secrets in a level is because the layout was so confusing that I just ended up going everywhere looking for the exit. And just kind of came across them.
I mean,
and then you get to around like episode 3, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is gold. Like, good enemy placement, good fun stuff to find on the side if you're looking, really cool looking environments. The teleporters get a lot of fun stuff done with them. It's just a lot more enjoyable by then, and it's like the team understood what they were trying to go for by then, and by that I mean John Romeo was taking over and his ego was inflating to the size of the sun.
I mean, let's be honest here. Has anything from, you know, even the 90s full stop aged as well as Doom?
No.
Simple as that. I mean, the only game I can think that's aged reasonably well is ironically Quake, which is basically Doom with better graphics and a slightly more sort of A-list soundtrack.
You could probably argue some of the Mario games, but like every other classic from that era, like more time passes the more realize how limited they were, especially with RPGs because they had like limited text capacity at that era. And of course translation problems, and like Zelda like just keeps getting better and better. But there's a charm and simplicity to Doom that works, and it's impressive because this was like cutting edge when it first came out. How much of this game was based around the new tech innovations, particularly the lighting system from what I can tell. I actually played a game that was released a little after Doom, made by LucasArts. It was another first-person shooter called Outlaws. And it has really good animated cutscenes, but it ain't Doom.
No, and the thing
there are no. Let me explain, because like it's not just design wise; it's actually tech wise. I was surprised to find out because I think that game came out in like 1996. I want to say, like Quake was already out by that time, and it's. I could actually get up on a building at one point and then look around, and I could actually see the level of geometry fucking up, so you couldn't see what's supposed to be a rough surface anymore. It was baffling. Doom has polish that a lot of games don't have. Like, they didn't just get this ready to ship. They wanted to make people remember this the moment it came out. This was pushing the envelope, and they were making sure it was. I think they wanted to make sure it was time-proof, and it worked. And like, there was just stuff here you would not expect for like the early '90s. Like, there was online multiplayer, like the limited sort, where you had to have like a host server sort of thing. But like, deathmatch exists in shooters these days because of this game. Like, Romeo fucking coined the term, which is great.
And it's actually quite surprising, sort of, as a sort of flip side, of how little first-person shooters have actually evolved from Doom. Because, like, you can play, like, any of the Call of Battlefield, of War, whatever, and they're the same game. Yeah, they got flair, and they got polish, and things might look a little bit more realistic, and it might be smoother, and obviously you've got controller and mouse control. But if
you do really well, you can unlock the white phosphorus.
Oh yes,
bomb.
we're not opening that particular.
Stop making me defend Spec Ops.
But you sort of pull the lid off, and it's the same nuts and bolts underneath. The first-person shooters seem to be the one genre, sort of particular. I mean, you see the evolutions in RPGs, you see the evolutions in obviously action games, you even see the evolutions in things like real-time strategy. First-person shooters have not evolved since Doom.
The thing about first-person shooters is that they rely a ton on design, more than I think any genre I played. It's all about the details about how the gameplay flows, like. This is why I really dig Borderlands, because depending on the character you play really does completely change how you approach the game. Like, especially once you get to the higher levels, and it has more RPG bent, so the shooting is nowhere near as good as it is in Doom. It doesn't feel as good, but like, there is a satisfaction in mastering a style of play with this character. Like, one of my favorite things about the Borderlands pre-sequel is that one of the characters can eventually dual-wield pistols and release a ridiculous amount of punishment, and even get sort of like a slow-mo style quick reflex shoot mode. like quick draw. And like no other character can play like that. And then of course you have stuff like Gears of War, which introduced cover shooting, which was a big deal at the time before everyone started copying it and everyone hated cover shooting because of that. And there was an interesting thing to that where it created a sort of flow to combat encounters that we weren't used to. Halo introduced regenerating health, which I'm actually a fan of regenerating health because it allows you to do a sort of design with levels in a very different way. Where like Doom was about surviving, for Halo it was more about not being so afraid to get into the flow of combat because you don't have to worry about losing all your health, and you could plan encounters better. But this meant like the old style of like labyrinthian corridors couldn't be done anymore, and that's where things started to get a bit more streamlined. So like modern shooters now are sort of evolving from the innovations of Halo and Gears of War, and are trying to create an experience that's more to the point. But shooters like Doom were more about exploring the environment, exploring the area, and finding stuff along with unexpected encounters. Like at one point in this game, one of the level exits actually tricks you, and you end up with a surprise and like a surprise imp behind a door. That caught me off guard the first time it happened. There was another that I believe had me go into a little arena fight. Like, that's not stuff you're going to see from modern shooters. And then, of course, you get into weird first-person adventures that sort of evolved from first-person shooters due to the influence of Half-Life, sort of being a blend, and things get kind of interesting from there. So now, with first-person perspective, you're seeing all sorts of experiments, basically starting with the flow of combat that Doom created, and then the twist on it that came later from other developers, and then people using the understanding of first person from those games to craft their games. And it is evolving, it's just much more subtle. You kind of have to look at the details.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Which is why I mentioned why Rage felt good earlier, because Rage, despite the fact that it has a very Borderlands style to it, a Borderlands 1 style, it has a combat feel that Borderlands can never have, because the shooting has weight to it. The shotgun has real power when you know how to use it. Like, guns don't just feel like a way to chip down numbers. They feel like real weight, and there's real weight and power to them, and that makes the gunplay itself very fun.
Particularly given...
Yeah, it's a mixture of both game feel, making you really feel how the gun feels, and like giving each weapon and ammo type a purpose. And this is what Doom understood way back when, because every weapon you get has a very different utility and purpose to it. The shotgun's good all around, but it doesn't pack enough of a punch for the really big stuff. You can stun lock bigger enemies with like the chain gun, which is really fun. The plasma gun eats up ammo fast, but it can do a lot of damage when you need it in a pinch, and so on and so forth. Like, there's a purpose to every weapon, and it's necessary for the harder difficulties because the game does not hold your hand at that point.
And I think one of the sort of the ultimate game experiences is on the topic of firearms, when you get the gun for the first time.
Yeah, the BFG, I was
big
like...
fucking gun.
And the game makes a big deal. I was like, you got the big fucking gun, wahoo, or something like that. And I tried it on an enemy, and I ate through some ammo, but Jesus Christ, that thing packs a punch. I get it now. It's not because it makes a giant explosion. It's because of how it feels when you fire it and the amount of damage you see it do. Those things have to intersect. The reason the shotgun in Doom feels so good, even though it's basically what a modern pea shooter would be in a modern first-person shooter, is because you get the kickback noise, you get the kickback animation where he's reloading after a shot, and you can do real damage with it the closer you get to an enemy, which is instead of like how a lot of modern shotguns are designed, which is like they're only good at close range, which is annoying.
And I definitely think
so.
Sorry.
The shotgun is your go-to because it's just so reliable.
And I definitely think that few modern shooters sort of actually go, yeah, what you've got there, that kills things. It feels real. It's sort of, it's astonishingly for a game that is 25 years old, it's where you shoot mostly demons in the face. It has a more realistic and feels more visceral, and I think why Doom has lasted so well, despite the imitators, despite the remakes, despite everything, is that Doom is just... yes, absolutely, it's a power fantasy, but there is nothing like this game.
It's making me think back on when I used to play a bit of Halo, and something a lot of the Halo 2 weapons did was the more alien they got, the more abstract they were, like the needle gun, for example. The idea with those is those are problem solvers, and there's a lot of tactical play to Halo, especially with how all the different enemy types just aren't things that can kill you, but like cause different problems when they're paired together with other enemy types, and you have to think on your feet, and that's why the more obtuse weapons make sense in that game. But like for a long time, that became the norm, and guns just didn't feel good in a video game anymore. Because they were tools instead of really kick-ass things that make things die real fast. It's like the difference between a driving game like Forza, which really cares about cars and is like handling and realism and all that, and Burnout, where it's just like, crash this car and make it blow up, woo! Like a child playing with a toy car. That's the mindset Doom has with guns, and it's what makes it so fun to play these days compared to Wolfenstein 3D, which hasn't aged quite as well. Because, it was about fun, it was about just pure excess, and that has stood the test of time, because there hasn't really been a game that's, recaptured that on a larger scale. Not even Doom 2016, which, tries to capture the feeling of Doom by switching to fast-paced arena shooting and the one-hit melee kills, but it's not really the same thing.
One kind of minor thing that I don't remember that much about Doom, to be honest, but one really strong memory I get from it is it's one of the first games I can remember where it tricks you into expecting something and then subverts your expectations. And it's just done so incredibly well, and there's traces of that in little optional pieces of dialogue in I don't know, Monkey Island or even Undertale, things like that. It's just in that way, because there's a level where you're walking down a long hallway, and then behind you hear the kind of chew sound of a door opening, and you turn around, and oh no, there's a bunch of enemies that just came out of a secret door behind you that just opened up, and now they're shooting at you. Oh no. So you carry on through the level, and then a while later you're walking down a corridor, and you hear that noise again, and you turn around, and oh no, it was another secret wall, and it just opened up, and loads of enemies came out and started attacking you, and you fell for it again. And then you come to another really long corridor, and you think, I know what's going to happen here. So you turn around, and you walk down the corridor backwards, because you're waiting for the secret door to open, and instead it's a regular door at the other end of the corridor, so you just walk backwards, hear the noise, and they still just come out behind you and start shooting you. And I just remember thinking oh, what the? I was trying to... Oh! It tricked me! Oh!
I think they do the fake exit thing a few times too, which is fun.
But it's just that specific, not only are we gonna, surprise you... any game can have essentially what is, a jump scare with enemies, but we're basically gonna trick you into basically setting it all up yourself, willingly. Because you think that you're doing the opposite of that, but you're not.
And then, of course, there are the areas with a lot of heavy shadows where you can't see much. I'm not a big fan of the invisible enemies. I think they're kind of dumb, but the ones obscured by shadows or just hiding right behind the door are the best. Because you're like, oh fuck, and then you back off and wait for them to come out. I think my favorite part was when I eventually got wise to the trick, and so I peeked around a corner really carefully, and there was one of those fucking Minotaur things just like lying in wait, and I got a free shot off. And it actually didn't react because the game probably wasn't expecting me to do that yet. That made me feel smart. But I did get a shot off, and then I was able to kill it. And it was fun.
And then a secret wall opened up, and another Minotaur came out behind you.
Doom is hard.
Yeah.
I had to play on the 2 lowest difficulties to get a feel for it, because, like anything higher, you're not going to be used to it if you're used to playing modern shooters. Part of the power fantasy in this is surviving these ridiculous odds, not just being awesome at cool guy. Like, the Doomguy gets fucked up, and that is something the 2016 game definitely got right, where it encouraged you to stay in combat and not run from it by making combat necessary to gain more health, which was a really clever modern twist on it. While in this game, it's more just about keeping out. You got to keep circle strafing because of the way aiming works in this game to get shots off. You don't have to line up perfectly. You just got to keep firing in the circle strafe motion, and you've got to find room to move while dodge shots. While you're also trying to be aggressive and defensive at the same time, and it's not something you can really do with more modern shooting controls, at least as well as this game does. That's my take on it anyways. I don't get to talk about game design much, but I'm glad I can right now because this game is really well designed.
If I remember correctly, a lot of the assets were actually physically, they actually had like sculptures and stuff and scanned it in, which is a nice little detail.
Yeah, some of those stone faces you see on the walls are taken from the Bram Stoker's Dracula poster.
Cultural belonging.
Yeah, a lot of games were doing that. I know for a fact that the Black Mirror, a really gorgeous looking point and click from like the 2000s, I think, or maybe the late 90s, I don't remember for sure, had that a few times. So yeah, and those like satanic like goat walls, I'm pretty sure those had to have been from some sort of album cover somewhere. There's no way that wasn't from an album cover.
Probably Slayer.
Something I found interesting about the textures is that it made me remember that Deus Ex was a very ridiculous game that had that looked like it had similar textures to Doom at a lot of times, but then when you went up to objects, the texture suddenly got massively better because like there was like a ridiculous texture engine in that game that lets you see a lot of detail, which is neat. And while in Doom, they just get shittier looking because limited to stuff, but all the colors mixed together properly to give you the right feel for the game, so you're always in the mood. It works well with its limits, and it pushes a lot of boundaries, and unlike a lot of boundary pushing games, it still plays really well, so you don't mind that. It's not like when everyone was trying to understand 3D, and that was... Oof. God, I think they were still trying to figure that out at this time for a lot of companies. Like, the Jaguar was like a disaster in that area.
Yeah, I mean, this is still the...
Do the math! Sorry.
This is still the era of, like, what was the thing that SNES ran on Mode 7? Like, sort of
no, I
fake...
think that was an additional chip or something.
Yeah, sort of fake 3D.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that they just use one of the developer's hands for your fist weapon when you go berserk. I think Duke Nukem did something similar later on. Is there anything else we need to add? Yeah, Doom holds up. Surprise. It's one of those games I think you can effectively play forever, and not in my usual dumb ways of playing a game forever where it has a lot of content but it's kind of shit. This is a game you can just play forever and always get the same amount of satisfaction just because it's that fun to actually play. So I'm really happy about that. And I'm sorry, Tom Hall, that everyone was a dick to you. I'm still kind of surprised he went to Ion Storm after Romero's 90 kids bullshit.
Yeah, to be honest, just if you have not played Doom, go play it now. Just finish this podcast. Go buy Doom. It's like what, £3 on Steam or sort of anywhere else, or probably if you go to your local photocopy, it'll probably be pre-installed on there. And just play this game because.
Oh, I almost forgot that the Cyber Demon fight you have at the end of the second set of levels is really fucking awesome. And it's just circle strafing around the big thing and shooting the missiles. But every hit counts so much that it's like really tense. Yeah, Doom's good.
And be careful on Steam because it has a few different names. So if you do want to like go and buy Doom immediately and play it, which you should, you want to look for Roller Coaster Tycoon Deluxe. That is what it is called.
I would also say that after you, if you've never experienced Doom before and you play it after our recommendation, get Ultimate Doom.
Yeah.
I would also say check out stuff also made in ITech 1, the Doom engine, particularly Strife, which has a ridiculously good updated version on Steam from Night Dive Studios. That is like at the tail end of the ITech 1's engine use. And it is a fascinatingly weird lost step in the evolution of the immersive journey, even though it still has like Doom-like gunplay. So like, there's just all sorts of cool. There's a big old gaping hole of Doom shit to find. Go look around modding communities. A lot of them keep games made in this engine alive. It's just really fascinating stuff. And with that, that brings us to our closing, and our next episode will be a grab bag. As usual, I went on itch.io and found some stuff with a common theme, and the theme this time was cyberpunk.
Ooh.
Hey.
So obviously every song I use next time is going to be from Billy Idol's legendary album Cyberpunk.
Indeed so. No, I wouldn't have it any other way.
The main song on the album was about the LA riots.
And I'll probably be opening the episode by reading Neuromancer or something.
He made a song about Neuromancer.
He did, and William Gibson listened to it and didn't quite think.
He's a Neuromancer, and he's trancing.
Hang on a minute.
But
new romance. Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Anyways, I have 6 games for us to try. At least half of them are demos for sure. And they all look interesting. Some of them look pretty small, so like it's not going to be a big headache, Elmo.
Yay!
I will give you the full list with links when we're done here. The games I've picked out are the demo for Vengeful Heart, a cyberpunk visual novel that looks like some sort of thriller and also kind of gay. There is File Maniac, a very interesting hacking game that looks like it has elements of the game you can only do by going into your computer yourself and your files and manipulating them, which is interesting. There's Outscore, a comedic point-and-click demo I'm interested in. Neo Dogma Episode 1, aka another demo. Some sort of cyberpunk adventure game. Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, is sort of horror adventure game sort of thing, but it also might be an erotic thing that Danny will like. Because I am aware of the developer of this one, Top Hat Studios, and sometimes they do dirty stuff, which, okay. And let's see, the last one is Black Box, which I forgot to write details on, unfortunately. My bad.
Ooh, mysterious.
Quite literally a black box.
I think that one might be. I think that might be another hacking game. We'll find out when we look at them all. So that's what we will be playing next time with Danny. This time, Danny will not escape this grab bag. She will experience it, and she will like it because I picked out good games this time. I didn't pick any irony stuff. I didn't go in the anime tag. I was not incredibly disappointed by awful horror developers. I was smart this time.
At least the tomatoes were okay.
And okay, we'll see you all next time for Billy Idol's Cyberpunk, the greatest album ever created.
The game.
And how should we close this out? John Carmack has so many
Horns.
unbirthed babies.
You got
Why did I
it.
say horns? That's just...
Because you see, you know what sperm is, right?
Yeah.
Unbirthed babies.
Yeah.
I'm saying John Carmack masturbates a lot.
Oh!
You got the bit.
Do you think he masturbates so much that it's on his permanent record? We're not ending on that.
Almost cancelled.